Iran took delivery of the Northrop F-5A Freedom Fighter in 1965, before most NATO allies had been offered the type. The Imperial Iranian Air Force operated over 100 as its primary lightweight fighter through the 1970s, and some of those airframes were still flying combat sorties against Iraq in the 1980s, 2 decades after delivery. The F-5A was designed to be simple enough for any air force to maintain. What its designers did not anticipate was that it would still be flying after its manufacturer had been legally prohibited from helping keep it in the air. The F-5E Tiger II arrived as Iran's upgraded lightweight fighter in the mid-1970s. After the revolution and the arms embargo, Iranian engineers spent 18 years maintaining the type without spare parts, without updated manuals, and without manufacturer support. That 18-year education had a consequence the sanctions designers had not planned for. When Iran unveiled its first domestically produced jet fighter in 1997, analysts immediately recognized the airframe. The F-5E that sanctions had forced Iran to master became the F-5E that Iran eventually learned to build. Iran operated more F-4 Phantoms than any air force outside the United States and Israel. Over 200 F-4D and F-4E airframes delivered through the 1970s. When American support ended after the revolution, Iranian engineers did something the aircraft's designers had not intended anyone to do. They reverse-engineered the components they could no longer import, manufacturing substitutes from scratch and cannibalizing airframes to keep the rest flying. McDonnell Douglas built the Phantom to be supported by McDonnell Douglas. Iran built an entirely parallel support infrastructure in its place. 16 RF-4E reconnaissance variants gave Iran a strategic intelligence capability the Shah considered essential: the ability to photograph targets deep inside Iraq and the Soviet Union without requesting American permission. During the Iran-Iraq War, when Iran had no satellite intelligence and no Allied reconnaissance support, RF-4E crews flew missions over Iraqi positions that provided the targeting data Iranian strike aircraft and artillery relied on. The eyes the Shah bought to watch the Soviets became the primary intelligence asset the Islamic Republic used to fight its first war. The mission changed completely. The capability was already paid for. Iran is the only country other than the United States to have operated the F-14 Tomcat, and the only one to have used it in air-to-air combat. 79 F-14As were delivered, along with AIM-54 Phoenix missiles, offered to no other export customer. After the revolution, Grumman technicians were expelled and all technical support was withdrawn, including access to weapon system software documentation. Iranian engineers reverse-engineered the missiles and rewrote the software from the aircraft they still possessed. The most sophisticated fighter America had ever exported became the aircraft Iran was most determined to keep flying, and did. 6 P-3F Orions, designed to hunt Soviet submarines in the North Atlantic, were delivered to Iran to patrol the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. After the revolution and the embargo, Iran had 6 complex 4-engine turboprops with no manufacturer support and no spare parts pipeline. Some were kept operational through cannibalization. The aircraft designed to find submarines in the Atlantic spent its Iranian career watching the Gulf shipping lanes that Iran's oil revenue depended on. The mission changed completely. The airframe partially endured. Approximately 14 Boeing 707s in tanker and transport configuration gave the Imperial Iranian Air Force strategic reach few regional powers possessed. The tanker variants could extend F-14s and F-4s to ranges covering the entire Middle East. After the revolution, Boeing support ended and the fleet deteriorated. Several airframes survived for transport and VIP duties. The tanker capability decayed more rapidly. What had given Iran power projection range became, under sanctions, a symbol of what the pre-revolutionary Air Force had been and could no longer fully sustain. 64 C-130 Hercules transports gave the Imperial Iranian Air Force one of the largest non-American C-130 fleets ever assembled. The Lockheed support contract lasted until the revolution. The aircraft lasted considerably longer. Iranian technicians have maintained the C-130 fleet for more years without manufacturer support than the aircraft was ever supported with it. Keeping airframes now over 50 years old, flying through a combination of locally manufactured components, cannibalization, and engineering knowledge accumulated across 4 decades of working on a type no one would help them fix. When Iraqi pilots flew their aircraft to Iran in January 1991 to escape destruction during Desert Storm, they brought Soviet types Iran had never operated. Among them were Su-22 M4 fighter ground attack jets, variable geometry Soviet aircraft Iran had no pilots trained for, no translated manuals, and no spare parts supply. Iran kept them anyway, eventually integrating a number into operational service. The defection intended to preserve Iraqi aircraft from American bombs gave Iran a Soviet ground attack capability it had never budgeted for, planned, or requested. Also among the 1991 Iraqi defectors were Su-24 Mk Fencers, variable geometry supersonic strike aircraft with a combat radius and weapon load significantly exceeding Iran's surviving F-4 fleet. Russia eventually provided technical support to operate them properly. The Su-24 became Iran's primary long-range strike platform for 2 decades, arriving uninvited, unfunded, and unplanned. The aircraft that flew to Iran to survive a war became the most capable offensive aircraft the Islamic Republic operated. It came as a refugee and stayed as a cornerstone. Iran purchased a fleet of MiG-29s from the Soviet Union in the late 1980s, the first genuinely modern air superiority fighter acquired since the F-14. The Soviet collapse disrupted spare parts and technical support before the fleet was fully established. Russia's supply chain problems left Iran with a capable fighter it could not fully maintain. The aircraft meant to modernize Iranian air power, modernized about half of what it was supposed to. The MiG-29 was the gap between what Iran needed and what the post-Soviet world was willing to reliably provide. China sold Iran the Chengdu F-7N, a development of the Soviet MiG-21 that Beijing had been building under license since the 1960s and improving without Soviet permission. For Iran, it offered something the surviving American types and the defected Soviet aircraft could not: a reliable supply chain from a country outside the Western embargo, with spare parts available through normal commercial channels. The MiG-21 that China had reverse-engineered without Soviet blessing became the aircraft Iran could actually maintain. The lineage ran: Soviet design, Chinese copy, Iranian operation. Russia agreed to supply Su-35 Flanker-E fighters to Iran, with deliveries widely reported but not independently confirmed as of 2024. If the type enters full Iranian service, it would be the most capable fighter Iran has ever operated. Thrust vectoring engines, long-range radar, beyond visual range missiles that nothing in current Iranian inventory can match. The aircraft Russia developed to compete with the F-15 would be operated by the Air Force that once flew the F-14. Whether Iran can sustain a modern Russian fighter is the question the F-14 already answered once, under harder circumstances. Unveiled in 1997 as Iran's first domestically produced jet fighter, the HESA Kowsar was described as an indigenous design. Aviation analysts identified it as a reverse-engineered F-5E, the same airframe maintained without American support for 18 years. Both assessments were correct. Iran had taken a foreign design it could no longer obtain parts for, studied it for 2 decades, and built its own version. Whether it was original mattered less than what it proved. Iran could manufacture a jet aircraft under sanctions. That capability had not previously existed. A development of the Azalakh with a twin-tail configuration resembling the F/A-18 Hornet, the HESA Saeqeh entered service with the IRIAF and appeared in formation flying demonstrations. Western analysts described it as a modified F-5 with a different tail. Iranian officials described it as a new design. Both were partially right. It is not an F/A-18. It is not meaningless. A country under total arms embargo developed, produced, and put into operational service a jet combat aircraft. The comparison to American hardware missed the more relevant point. Unveiled in 2018, the HESA Kowsar was presented as Iran's first domestically produced fourth-generation fighter, a claim Western analysts received with skepticism, given its external resemblance to the F-5 family. Iranian officials were more precise than the international coverage acknowledged. The Kowsar was described as domestically manufactured, not domestically designed from scratch. The distinction matters. Iran was claiming industrial capability, the ability to produce airframes and avionics without foreign supply chains, not a design breakthrough. The manufacturing claim was more credible than the innovation claim. Shown publicly in 2009, the HESA Shafaq is an advanced jet trainer with limited combat capability whose development has been slow and operational status limited. It matters not as a combat aircraft, but as institutional evidence. Iran has continued funding jet trainer development through 4 decades of sanctions and competing defense priorities. The Shafaq represents the infrastructure of an aerospace industry, design bureaus, test facilities, trained engineers, that sanctions were intended to prevent Iran from building. The trainer that cannot fight demonstrates that the industry behind it exists. Unveiled in 2013 as a domestically designed stealth fighter, the IAIO Kaha 313 attracted immediate scrutiny. Cockpit too small for standard instruments, intakes too narrow for jet airflow, canopy too shallow for a helmet. The aircraft, as displayed, could not fly as described. It did fly. Photographs showed it airborne, though analysts disputed altitude and conditions. The Kaha 313 is the most examined Iranian aircraft claim in history, and the least resolved. Comment sections have not reached consensus. Neither have the analysts. Iran's domestically produced advanced jet trainer, the HESA Yasin, was developed to reduce dependence on foreign training aircraft. Less capable than the combat types it supports, it has received less international attention than the fighter programs. It matters for exactly that reason. Training pilots domestically, on domestic aircraft using domestic syllabi, closes the last gap in an indigenous air power capability. A fighter without trained pilots is not a fighter. The Yasin is how Iran ensures its fighters find pilots without asking anyone outside Iran for help. Used in Yemen, Libya, Nagorno-Karabakh, and Ukraine, the Shahed 136 has operated in more theaters than any other Iranian aircraft in history. A delta-wing, piston-engine one-way attack drone costing roughly $20,000 per unit, it was designed to be produced in quantity and accepted as attritable. Individually easy to shoot down. In swarms, it saturates air defenses. Russia used it against Ukrainian power infrastructure from 2022 onward. The aircraft that most changed perceptions of Iranian aerospace capability was not a fighter. It was designed to be cheap enough to lose. Iran's primary medium-altitude, long-endurance armed drone, the Shahed 129, is a turboprop surveillance and strike platform with reported endurance of 24 hours and the ability to carry precision munitions. Externally resembling the American MQ-9 Reaper in configuration, it has been used by Iranian proxy forces in Syria and Iraq. The drone that looks like a Reaper is not a Reaper. It has nonetheless performed Reaper-like surveillance and strike missions in Reaper-like theaters, at a fraction of the Reaper's cost, through proxy forces the Reaper's operators could not have used. Presented as Iran's most capable unmanned platform, longer range, heavier payload, more sophisticated sensors than the Shahed 129, the Shahed 149 Gaza was publicly revealed with a name linking it explicitly to the ongoing Gaza conflict. Its actual operational capability is difficult to verify independently. What is verifiable is the naming decision. Iran chose to associate its most advanced drone program with a specific conflict at the moment of its introduction. The aircraft and the message arrived together. The name was not incidental. The name was the announcement. Beginning as a simple reconnaissance platform in the 1980s, the Ababil series established Iran's foundational UAV capability before the drone programs the world would later notice. The Ababil 3 is a propeller-driven ISR drone, surveillance, reconnaissance, battlefield observation, operated by Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Iranian-backed forces across Lebanon, Yemen, and Syria. It is not a loitering munition. Its significance is different and less dramatic. It is the platform that gave Iranian proxy forces persistent eyes over battlefields they could not otherwise observe. The Shahed series got the headlines. The Ababil built the operators who used them. Iran's largest domestically produced drone, the IAIO Fotros, is a turboprop system with reported range of 2,000 kilometers and 30-hour endurance, unveiled in 2013. Independent verification of its operational parameters is limited. What is independently verifiable is that Iran has invested in a long-range unmanned platform at the capability tier that only a handful of countries have attempted. Whether the Fotros performs as described is uncertain. That Iran built something in that category is not a matter of dispute. Used extensively by Houthi forces in Yemen against Saudi radar installations and airfields, the Qasef-1 is a small delta-wing loitering munition built on a straightforward concept: a cheap, GPS-guided one-way attack drone that reaches defended targets without sophisticated launch infrastructure or pilot training. Yemen was the proving ground. The operational patterns developed against Saudi air defenses with the Qasef-1 preceded and conceptually informed the Shahed 136 program that Russia later adopted at scale. The smaller drone wrote the manual. The larger one scaled it. 202 Bell AH-1J C Cobras, the largest Cobra export order in history, were delivered to Iran before the revolution. In the Iran-Iraq War, they flew thousands of anti-armor sorties against Iraqi tank formations, performing the close air support mission the Islamic Republic had inherited from the Shah's military, without being able to call Bell for help. The 8-year war provided, inadvertently, the most thorough real-world test of Iranian rotary maintenance capability imaginable. By the time it ended, Iranian engineers had proved they could sustain a complex attack helicopter through a sustained land war without a single factory-supplied spare part. The Panha Tufan, Typhoon, is Iran's domestically developed attack helicopter, assessed as a reverse-engineered AH-1J. It did for the Cobra what the Azarakhsh did for the F-5. Took an American platform Iran could no longer obtain parts for, studied it through decades of maintenance, and built a domestic version with domestically produced systems. Not a better Cobra. A Cobra Iran can build, arm, and maintain without asking anyone's permission. Under the circumstances, that is the more relevant specification. Light, armed and domestically designed, the HESA Shahed 285 Scout helicopter completes Iran's rotary wing indigenization arc, from American Cobras delivered in the 1970s through the reverse-engineered Tufan to a light helicopter that exists entirely because the embargo made every step of its development necessary. The sanctions intended to prevent Iran from building an aerospace industry produced instead an industry built around not needing the countries that imposed the sanctions. The embargo closed a door. Iran built a new one. Every aircraft in this list tells the same story from a different angle. The Shah bought American. The revolution lost American support. The engineers kept it flying. The sanctions forced domestic production. The drones born from sanctions are now used in wars the sanctions were meant to prevent. Iran began as a customer of the world's most advanced aerospace industry. It ends as a producer of reverse-engineered fighters, of loitering munitions over Ukraine, of attack helicopters built from inherited knowledge. The embargo built the industry it was designed to destroy.